Hello and welcome to episode number 16 of the Curling Legends podcast. My name's Kevin Palmer, and each week through the curling season, I share a conversation with a player or storyteller from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We cover curling from the invention of the slide through to the adoption of the free guard zone. Dan Carey is on the show today. Once again, thanks for listening, and just a reminder, you can rate us on iTunes if you are listening on our webpage at curlinglegends.ca or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/curlinglegends. Thanks again for listening, but just a reminder, you can also download one of several apps for your smartphone and subscribe to the podcast there. And if you do have a friend or family member that struggles with technology, please give them a hand and help them listen to the show. Thanks again to Steve Lobel for providing the artwork, Mark Rogerman, who does the music, and as always, Jerry Gertz and Curling Zone for supporting the podcast. Dan Carey and his three siblings grew up in the East Kildonan section of Winnipeg, Manitoba. They played all sports, but eventually, oldest brother Bill became very focused on curling and, in fact, won the 1979 Brier, playing third for Barry Fry. Dan had aspirations in hockey, but eventually, as those subsided, partly due to a bad broken arm, curling became more of a focus for Dan, and under the tutelage of his brother, developed some shot-making skills and competed year in, year out with attempts to make the Brier. The Purple Heart seemed to elude him, but eventually he re-teamed with Vic Peters, someone him and Bill had played with several years before, in 1991. And that team that was formed with longtime teammate Don Rudd, and Vic brought along his longtime teammate Chris Neufeld. The team gelled not immediately, as you'll hear, but eventually found themselves getting on a roll that took them right to the Brier final, where they defeated Russ Howard of Ontario in 1992. The following year, they returned to the Brier, and Dan will go into some detail about a lot of the controversy that surrounded that event, both with changes to the ice conditions that were made mid-event, as well as the mess that was created when four teams all tied for first place, the Vic Peters Rink specifically having beaten the other teams that were tied at the top. And we'll talk a bit about the 1997 Brier Final, which was a phenomenal game. Not a well-played game, but certainly a barn burner nonetheless. And it was held in a sold-out Calgary Saddledome, which at the time was unprecedented and may still be the largest live audience to watch a curling game. We have a great conversation. Dan's very candid about many topics. He still is close to the game in a couple of ways. One, by being the father of defending Scotties champion Chelsea Carey, who now resides in Alberta, and also coach for Team Reed Carruthers out of Manitoba. I really enjoyed my conversation with Dan. I'm sure you will too. Here is my conversation with Dan Carey.
It was never my favorite spiel. I won my spot out of there several times. I won a main event, and I won the grand aggregate one. So I got everything I ever wanted to do at that month.
Yeah. So you didn't appreciate the history, the nostalgia?
Not really.
It's a grind.
I appreciated that fact, but it wasn't a test of skill in my mind. It was a test of endurance.
Yeah.
And there was a difference. And to have, and you could go through that thing and not play anybody and get your spot. And you could be down in the Crispy Critter events and play everybody in the world. So I didn't really enjoy that. And, I dreaded it because if we needed our spot, there was a lot of pressure on the thing on every game.
Yeah.
And if we didn't need our spot, I thought, well, why don't we just party? Who needs to curl the party, right?
Yeah, and if you're actually busy with work or family stuff, you sit there and go, okay, this is now a week, and I'm not going to Mexico. I'm actually spending it driving around Winnipeg.
I didn't do anything for my confidence to go in there and not win.
Yeah.
So
well, that's the other thing. And then maybe like you're playing these game after game after game, and you're not really. It's almost like golf, right? When you stop thinking about each shot, and then you find, wow, I'm not playing very good, and you get into a bad habit.
And you start to doubt yourself. Yeah, I just never saw anything good coming out of it unless I needed a spot. And then it was nice to have that last chance to get back in.
I do very little research when but I did do it's good to do a little. When you guys went back in '93, you went through. So you were defending Brier champ. You didn't win in the zone, in the city zone. What happened?
We just got beat.
Yeah.
I mean, we found out real quick that it's hard to win. It's even harder to repeat. I mean, we learned that year that everybody's ready to play you, and if you take a night off, you're going to embarrass yourself there. And quite frankly, Chelsea's finding that right now this year, right? I mean, people are ready to play you when you're Team Canada, and there's there's no games off, and we just got beat. We didn't play good in a game. That was the problem with that whole system back in the day, was 2 losses and you're done. Like, it's, you can lose to a good team in a good game and you can get your ass blown out.
I heard that Orist, after winning the Worlds in 72, didn't get out of the Fort Rouge in 72.
And
Which is unbelievable.
You try to tell the kids now that we had to win like 7 games to get out of the club to get into the zone. It just boggles their mind, Same as a junior, like the schoolboys. I said to them, shit, we had 350 teams in the schoolboys.
Okay, well, let's go right back. So where'd you grow up originally?
Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg.
Yeah, in East Kildonan. Yeah, started curling at, basically I guess my dad took me to where he curled, which was the old Heather, before the new Heather was even around. So we shoved rocks around, and we always had, once a year, we would play buddies of his and their family. There was the Robinsons versus the...
And had your dad had a bit of success competitively?
Not
or
really.
Just not really?
Not really. Yeah. He was a great player, but he loved playing. I think the only success he ever ended up having was, I think one year they won their zone in senior and made it.
And he still tells the story, I'm sure.
Well, he did tell, he's gone now, but we would remind him of that, and he'd just kind of shake his head because he didn't, he thought we were a bunch.
It's funny how my dad, I will still to this day, and he's 77, will tell a story about how he was playing out of Gimli and who is he playing with. It's funny, I should remember even the name of the skip, but it's like they, missed an open hit to go to the provincials. And like that, one of those stories. So, and it was you and your brother, and so how many?
I have an older, there's 3 boys, and I have a twin sister. So there was 3 boys and a girl in the family. I was the baby.
By a few seconds?
Half hour older than me.
Half hour.
Wow.
Which,
I like to tell this. She was breech, so I like to tell the story that once she got out of the way, I wanted to start things off on the right foot. So apparently I turned around before I made my appearance. But Bill is 3 years older than me, and Murray is our oldest brother, and he's 5 years older.
So did all of you kind of take to it a little bit? Or
Murray wasn't competitive to the same extent.
But when you were young and your dad was taking you out,
everybody curled.
Everybody went out.
Everybody, it was part of the deal, right? It was the same with golf.
But you guys did other things? Did you guys play hockey,
played all sports,
baseball, whatever?
Yeah, my mom and dad thought, rightfully so, that their job was to expose us to as many things as possible, and we would pick up what we liked. But we played, we played also. We were, guys talk about, don't you remember that TV program from back? We never watched it. Like, we were always out doing them. Melrose Community Club was right. We lived on Chelsea. It was right, cut through one house, and we were at the hockey rink for that. The Y was just down from there, and so football. We played a little football, a little baseball. Didn't really do any track and field. Lots of golf. Did a lot of swimming, competitive swimming and diving. We did for a while. Yeah, we were supposed to.
Yeah. So you started throwing really. When did you start actually curling regular? And
you weren't allowed to play with the big rock until you were about 12. I think I was 12 when I officially could actually join a league. We played Jam Can. Everybody played Jam. We were the 1966 Empress Jam Can curling champions.
Do you still have like a trophy for that?
I have a jacket somewhere. I think my mom probably threw it out, but
was that actually a big deal?
It was a big deal.
Yeah. Is that amongst the city then? Or
it was the whole city. There was probably 200 teams.
And so these actually were like a jam.
What they did was Bonspiel it wasn't the jam cans.
Okay,
it was now they had plastic rocks.
Oh, okay.
These were new. Like, we played with jam cans at school and stuff.
I did too.
Now they had the plastic rocks with sand in them. Great idea. Now you hit something really hard. Now you got sand leaking out on the ice. Doesn't work so good.
Well, it's fine on shuffleboard.
Yeah.
Just not on the ice.
And I played with Bill, and we actually lost the final game, but the team that we lost to was too old, and they got disqualified, so we won.
So actually you won by default.
So we got these blue jackets said 19.
Really?
We were pretty proud of that.
So is that when you knew that the Brier was going to be easy? Like, at that point, it was like, this is a step in that.
I never even thought about the Brier or anything.
Did you follow it? Like, did you have the Ken Watson on curling book or any of that?
Not really. I mean, I followed Doogie, but then I was already getting to be like 17. I started, we played. I got on a team, and Bill was in that. And I started out at 30.
Did you guys always play together then, you and Bill, or was it?
No. Actually, when I first thought that if he could win the Brier, I could win the Brier, it was when Bill won in 79.
In 79, yeah.
And it wasn't on TV.
So not even before that, because he was having some success then in the 70s, or?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But he was into it, and I had better things to do.
Oh, really?
Like, I sort of, after high school, I didn't really curl. And then
Did you go to that Brier in 71? No. You didn't even go in Winnipeg? The one that was in Winnipeg?
Oh, in Winnipeg,
70.
sorry. Yeah, in 71 I did. Dookie's Brier, yeah. I went and watched some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I followed it a little bit, but the first time we actually were in the provincials, I didn't even know we were in the provincials. I actually wish I wish I could do that now, because I just went and played and tried to win. I didn't.
Okay, sorry, so the first time you were in men's provincials?
No, in junior provincials.
In the junior provincials. Okay, yeah, that makes a little more sense.
He said we play at the Granite at whatever time, and I showed up there to play, and I said, what is this? And he said, it's the provincial. I said, what? He said, yeah, remember that game where we beat so-and-so? So
it was just someone,
I just showed
Dan,
up
here's where we play,
yeah.
and okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
And did you understand what the was that schoolboys at the time? So you had to play in the same high school, right?
Yeah.
And so
see, and how we got in was we made the final of the Pepsi event, which was the second hardest event to win, because that was the last one that you fell to, right? So we won 4 or 5 games and dropped down there.
So you're used to those big long bonds.
Yeah, we got in a playoff, and we played Johnny McTavish, who was the provincial champ the year before, and he was out of Miles Mac, the same school as we were. And I didn't know that the winner of that game, I didn't know what it was for. So we lost the game. I was pissed off. I said, okay, we got this playoff against Johnny McTavish.
So who's telling you all this?
Johnny Locks was
okay, yeah. He was your okay. So he's the guy taking charge, but clearly you were just
I was the talent.
You were the talent. You were the savant. Just show up
and we win.
Oh, that's funny.
But I was never. I wish I could do a little more of that now, actually, or in my curling career. Because even in hockey, I never knew the names of other guys I never knew. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, they were the opposition. I didn't care who they were or what they were.
You just like to
wanted to win. Yeah.
You like to play. You enjoyed the being in the sport. So you weren't even necessarily a kid who watched sports or followed it too much. You just like to play.
I prefer to play than watch. I'd watch, but I wouldn't miss playing to watch.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're someone who, if it's U.S. Open's on, you'd probably rather go golfing than actually watch the U.S. Open.
Right. Not now, but that's the way it was.
Yeah. Well, now the body hurts a little more, right? So you say, well, maybe I'll just stay home this day. I don't have to get. Or
I can golf this day, and I can do both.
Can do both. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So out of high school, then, so you kind of didn't really play much. Were you still play? Did you play playdowns at all, or you didn't even
play at all? I didn't play at all for about. I'm going to say I didn't play at all for about.
Was that a surprise to people? Because you probably came up with a crew of guys and curling was really quite big at that time. Like you say, there was lots of junior teams.
Yeah.
So around that time, who's coming up out of juniors at that time that you?
Well, the juniors that Johnny McTavish, as I mentioned, he was one of them. Actually, a lot of them didn't go any further than that. Like they would win. When Chelsea was growing up, I kept telling her it's a big deal to win the junior. Yeah. I said, there's lots of guys win the junior. I don't even know what their name is. I said, the thing you want to win is once you get out of junior kind of thing. So I didn't pay. So Bob Christie was another guy that was skipping. Dale Duguid was a couple years younger. Yeah. So we knew about him.
What was Dale like at that time?
Same.
Was he? Yeah. Kind of driven, maybe not the most socially comfortable guy.
I'm the greatest guy in the world, and if you don't know it yet, I'll tell you.
And he'd own up to that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He made no bones about it. I mean, he was,
and was he a good player?
And
he was a good player. But tough to carry that name.
Oh, I think that had to be a really hard task. As a matter of fact, when I think it was the first junior I was in. I might have been in 2 juniors, and I had broken my hand playing hockey. I had made the team. There was the East End Barons were the provincial champions in, I'm going to say, about 70. And then you played juvenile for 2 years. So I was 17, trying out for this provincial championship team, and you could play for 2 years, and I'm a first-year guy. And there was only 2 first-year guys who made the team, and I was one of them. So that's when I thought, see, hockey was my deal.
This curling thing was something else to do between the hockey.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't.
Whereas the other 3 guys are like, we need Dan. Yeah. If we could just get him to
I'm going skating that night. Yeah. Hockey was the deal. I decided I was going to see how far I could go. I mean, I wasn't big enough and all that other stuff, but I thought I was pretty good. I was a goal scorer.
Oh, okay. So you didn't necessarily have that I'm going to go through a guy mentality, or did you?
Oh, I did. Yeah, because I was little too. I didn't grow till grade 11. So, and I think that's the best way to grow up, because you learn how to hit bigger guys and you learn how to take hits. If you're the big guy all the time, then everybody catches up to you. I think that there's a definite coming down to earth that happens. And I was...
Okay, so you broke in your
So
hand.
I broke my hand. I broke it. I smashed it playing hockey. So I had a cast on that came up.
And these are corn... You're probably using corn broom in the day, right?
Yeah. And paddles. So, we were into the paddles already, too.
Point.
So I had a cast that came up this thumb and up these two fingers.
On the left hand.
On the left hand. So all I had out were those two fingers. Yeah. So I couldn't even tie my shoelaces. Like, I had a hell of a time tying my shoelaces. So we're in the granite. Provincials are in the... Donnie Dugan's the reigning two-time world champion. And I'm struggling to do up my shoelace. And he's in the club. And so I'm down there trying to do it. And he walks over and he says, let me give you a hand with that, young fella. So I stood up and Donnie Dugan's on his knees, tied up my shoelaces. And all the other juniors are just going... So
now, you didn't know who Don was, right?
I knew who he was.
All right, because it was...
So I knew who he was because I was doing this deal. I was looking around.
And saying, yeah, look at me. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. It was great. Yeah.
And then, and then out of that, you're, take it or leave it. Just take it.
Then the hockey with the cast. I mean, I missed 2 years. I wore the cast for a year. I had to get a bone graft out of my hip for it. I tried to go back after that, and you can't miss.
Oh, you found that was a big.
I tried to stay at it. I tried to just go skating, but I couldn't hold a stick. And it's kind of like sweeping and never getting to throw a rock is what it felt like to me. And that's a real development stage, right? 17, 18.
Well, then as a goal scorer, right? Yeah, at that point, it's like you couldn't really, you weren't maneuvering the puck much. You were probably just like you were a body. If you'd have just been a mucker, it would have been okay, right? You'd have been a guy that went in the corners, but
I had that cast on, and I didn't treat it as well as I should have in terms of it's supposed to be because you immobilize.
Yeah.
Before we'd play a game, I'd go into the bathroom. Like I was still curling because it didn't change much for me curling because I always held the corn broom at the end with my left hand down on the ice. So all I did now is I had no broom. I just put a knit mitt over my hand and I'd slide on the cast. It was, exactly. So it didn't change much. Everybody thought this was really amazing, and I thought, really not. I mean, it changed very little as far as that goes. But I'd go into the bathroom and I'd run the tap, plaster cast, and I'd get it a little wet and I'd bang it around on the sink so I could get just a little bit of movement out of that, just in case, if I could get 3 licks in, it might make that 16th of an inch difference, which was...
But you had that sort of hockey mentality, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, which is, if I could take this damn cast off, I would. I could play. Yeah, no matter what.
And I talked the doc in there. He cut it off one time, and like I said, I think I had. I mean, wearing it.
That's
for
a long. You had a year, unbelievable.
It's a bone that apparently football players break a lot. It's called scaphoid, and you rupture the blood supply too when you break it. So it's notorious for being a slow healer, and it doesn't help if you're doing what I was doing with the thing too, right? So I got him to cut it off one. I said, just give me a weekend with it off. Like I just need to have it off, and he said, okay, because there was a hockey tournament that was going on. I went out and played, scored 2 goals, one-handed. I just get the pass from the winger. I got scouted actually for the St. Boniface Saints, their scouting program, but that never went anywhere.
So through that time, as you're kind of coming out of juniors, Bill's playing, and he's serious about it. This is his passion.
It's his deal.
Yeah.
He worked hard at it back, and I learned a lot from. I don't think Bill gets anywhere near the credit he should get. He's way ahead of his time. Like all the stuff that they're doing now with national team programs, with practicing and filming cameras and stuff. He made up his own stuff.
Oh, did he?
Back
Okay.
then. We slid through rocks. Like he would put the rocks tight like they do now. Like
was anyone else doing that, or like did he didn't really pick that up from someone?
He came up with that on his own.
Yeah.
So he taught me the delivery stuff, and we would go out and practice with all these different things that he'd sort of come up with. He invented the angle brush head. Everybody thinks Eddie Wernick did, but Jim Fergale was a buddy of his. They went to school together. So Bill went into Fergale and said, take this brush, we got to get a bit of an angle. So he decided that was going to be the most effective with sweep, which is right. And everybody thought he had quite a temper. He was pretty famous for his outbursts on the ice, and he didn't really care who saw him. Or he was like Orest. For some reason, everybody hated it when Bill did it. It was disgusting and had no place. Orest would do it, and everybody...
Colorful,
Yeah, it's all
that whole team with Orest, they don't bark at each other all the time, right? With Usakis and
Johnny Usakis and Orest. Well, I loved playing those guys because they'd just be bitching at each other all the time. I remember once I threw a shot and I made a shot or something, and Johnny Usakis says, "See, I told you. Like that's the ice that we needed." Orest, he hit the broom. Oh, we used to.
And that was
like
constant.
It was guys. Just never nonstop. They were like a married couple. They were hilarious.
Yeah. So Bill was a little angry on the ice. You said, right?
So you'd see this push broom,
bent broom, and people thought it was from
whacking it on the bench. Everybody said, "Holy Christ! Are you like your brother? Like you got one of those?" So actually built this way. And the tough part was they couldn't figure out how to get
and this is what year now? So when
that would have been, he won in 79.
And they used corn in 79.
Well,
or did they use push broom?
I think they were in the transition. I think they used corn in 79. Woody and Sparky's corn, for sure. But they were, the push brooms, Gauzel was revolutionizing the game with the push broom.
Yeah, in 76 and then 78. In 78, but 80 when they went to the Briers.
70, in 1980, I played with Bill the year after he won the Briers. Because that team was done. They might have played another year.
Yeah.
And then I played with him, and we had Woody was lead.
So now at that point, was that when you first came back to the game?
That's when Well, I'd played a couple nights a week with Johnny Loxton. We went in zone stuff.
Just to get back into it.
And I didn't mind playing. I was back into because hockey was done, so I needed something to do in the winters. And
so done. Like you said, you weren't even playing. It was sort of like
I was playing old timers. But not competitive in the hockey at all. So
you thought, well, if I'm going to be not competitive, I might as well curl.
Right.
I'm just going to get out a couple times a week.
I need competitive somewhere. My problem was playing old timers, and and I'm hitting guys in the corner, and they're all going, "No, you can't do that." Going, well, this is no fun. So Johnny Loxton called me up, and I played with him a couple times a week. And that's actually when I first met Vic, because he had come in from Steinbach, and he was playing at Rossmere with.
So how old are you at that time then?
I'm 26. 25, 26, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Was it love at first sight then when you and Vic met, or was it?
No.
You guys hit it off, or was it?
Well, I liked Vic. I mean, you can't not like Vic when you meet him. I mean, it was there, but there was still the competitive thing. Like I didn't think he was as good as everybody else thought he was, and I was going to try to make sure I showed that when I played him. But what happened was actually I played with Johnny. We had good success against Vic. We always had pretty good games with him. And then Bill called and said, "Why don't we do this because our team's done?" So I went with him and played with him for I think it was 80. So 1, 2, probably 4 years.
Yeah, you guys got along well, you and Bill. You were.
Yeah, he taught me. He was who I learned from. He was the guy I looked up to. He was a little bit of my hero.
So was he? So that image he had on the ice that was very different off the ice. He was actually sounds like he was more of a thinker about the game and like to teach and
really a thinker about the game, like really a lot. And stuff that didn't make sense about how stuff was run, he would complain about. And everybody complains about. But he would say, "Why don't you do it this way?" He's a really smart guy. Well, he's an actuary, so.
Yeah. So okay, you explained everything.
Yeah, his problem on the ice was he's doing all the odds of different. Like he outthought himself. His challenge was he'd get ahead of himself with just thinking too much.
That's right. Yeah, I think I remember hearing that actually. Yeah, he's kind of had a bit of the mathematical.
Yeah, he's a little bit of the mad scientist with some stuff, and he came up with with strategies that people use now. That Mike Riley gets credit for the cutting off the corner guard by coming around the corner guard. That's why he won the Brier. Well, that was our strategy that Bill and I started using, and Riley thought that was a hell of an idea, so he took the thing and won the Brier with it. But as I say, Bill, people remember the outbursts and all that stuff. They don't remember a lot of the good stuff he did for the game.
How did you guys get along on the ice then? Was it very much you just came to throw and he made, just let him think through some of those things, or did you guys have...
I was good for him, I think, because I would know when he was getting too involved in stuff, and I could calm him down a little bit, and he'd listen.
Which sometimes doesn't happen with brothers.
I was pretty much the only guy he'd listen. If I went to him and I said, I remember one time, and I don't know what you can and can't have on this thing, but...
We can edit whatever you want out of here, don't worry.
We were playing, and we were grain exchange. We had about a 10-man team because we were bonspieling and stuff like that. And Vic, we were playing with Vic. No, maybe not.
Well, if you got 10 guys, you probably were playing with just...
We all showed up. So, like the four of us, because we lost out of whatever spiel it was, and this was now playoffs in the club stuff. So we thought, well, we better go out to this support. And Bill's deal, and no free guards, and we're playing in the first end on the end sheet in the old Grain X. And Donnie misses his first 2 shots. And we're playing it's D group, I think. We're playing a team that we should beat easy. And it always bothered Bill if you came out with the attitude that we're going to beat these guys. And you got off to a slow start, and they got pumped up because they made a couple shots, and now they're stealing one on you the first end. And he hated that because, now they're going to play great all game, and we're going to have to work our butts off. If we come out and just jump all over these guys, we'll win this easy, and we can go, for a nice meal or something.
Take away the hope right at the right at the
So Donnie misses his first 2 shots, and I guess it's about the third end. And Bill's fuming, like he's hoofing rocks into the corner. Like we're all going, this is D group. Like Donnie he looked at me and he said, "You're a fuckball." I said, "I know." He said, "Go down there and tell him that." So I went down there and I said, I looked at him, I said, it's no wonder people think you're a fucking asshole. I said, "You are." And I turned around and I walked away.
And you're the only guy that could tell him that.
Yeah, and he thought, "Oh, Jesus, Danny's telling me that. I must be being an asshole."
So clearly there was a competitive streak in your family. And this is what drove that kind of, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. I think more in Bill and I than, like, my sister. I mean, I shouldn't say that. My sister's really competitive. Murray's the one who's probably the leader, which I think often happens with the oldest. For whatever reason. He's
the Fredo of the family. He's the,
yeah.
He didn't get to be the
Don
Corleone, yeah.
He was the book, he was more the books guy. Like he played and he was a decent athlete, but he was never, he was never competitive to the level in the stuff that he did. And he was more.
So did you ever see a bit of Bill in you at times where you, like,
the funny thing is,
you want to be careful taking the hockey mentality onto the curling rink because it's not the same sport, right? Like, did you ever?
And physically we were different. And once and I got into pushing little weights and stuff like that, I was always afraid of Bill when I was a kid. Because when he loses temper, like, my sister and I, we'd hide under the bed. Like,
oh, really?
Bill,
so
like he would lose it. And then when I got a little older and I got a little bigger and I got a little stronger, I was bigger and stronger than he was. We really only had one fight. The rest of the time he'd lose it. I'd put my hands up and I'd walk backwards and he'd punch my hand. So it was just kind of, okay, all right. Because I knew if I was going to fight him, I had to get madder faster. That was the only way to have it. So we had one knockdown, drag out thing where I got him in the headlock and I wouldn't, because I knew if I let go, I was dead.
Yeah.
But, we always had a real competitive streak. And I didn't really think I was anywhere near as competitive as him. I always thought of myself as not being competitive. I would say to people, "I'm not that competitive." And they look at me and go, "Are you?" Like,
so you had a different perception of yourself
I did.
Based on measuring yourself against your brother.
Right. And all I ever heard was, "He's so damn competitive." So to me, it was a bad thing because I would hear my dad say, "He's just so damn competitive," and he'd be mad about something that he did. He broke 5 goal stick. He was a goalie. And they were playing in some tournament, and he broke every goal stick they had. Like, they lost about 8-1 and over the crossbar.
So he had the full Hextall.
So he played with a regular stick at the end. That's all they had to give him. They didn't have a goal stick. And I thought this was hilarious. I was and I turned around to say to my dad, "What an ass!"
Yeah.
There's my dad sort of ducked underneath the boards and he's headed for home.
Wow.
So he was Bill's maybe the most competitive guy I've ever met.
So you're playing with so you've met Vic now. You're playing with Johnny Loxton. So at what point are you starting to think, "Oh, okay, I've seen Bill have success. I want to figure out how this is, hey, I want to win a Brier." Like, did that happen right after Bill won? Or, so that's kind of what got you back into it a little bit. Yeah. So even though it was sort of, I'm going to do this a couple nights a week.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't as a
parent.
parent.
I didn't have that set as a goal that I'm going to do this and I'm going to
right away. Okay, that wasn't
Bill was
out of the
into
gate.
It serious and he was working hard at it and going to Bonspiels and he got to the provincials and that was pretty cool.
But once he won it, there had to be this,
Yeah, there was.
I should get one too.
I thought, well, shit, if he can win, I can win. Right?
Plus, he's got that on you now at that point, right?
And actually, I didn't think of it negatively. I was really proud of him, and I just thought, wow, like,
because he put so much into it.
So you can do this, like, I could do that if I.
Because you played with him for years.
I played with him for years. When he called up, he said, "Let's put a team together." I said, "Yeah, right on."
So now at this point, you start actually working on your game. You're and you're using some of the stuff that he's developed, and you're just trying to work and practice along. And was everybody else at that time?
Nobody practiced.
That's what I was wondering, like kind of that early '80s, right?
Right.
It was kind of an interesting time because there seemed to be like natural talents, right? Like the Burtnick rink were young, the Gals were young. It was your young teams all of a sudden that were kind of taking the spotlight out of these older guys, right? Yeah. So that probably also was encouraging, I'm sure, because you're like, hey, we don't have to be in our 40s or 30s. Like, we don't have to be these seasoned old guys. We can be young guys and just be just as successful. Was there a bit of that?
Well, there was a bit of that. And, like I played second when I first hooked up with, Bill played third. See, Bill skipped a lot, but he only skipped if he had to. He didn't really want to skip. He was the best player a lot of times, so he ended up being skipped. But when he played third, he loved playing third because in his mind, it was just a walk in the park. It was so easy to just play third versus skip. But he, because of the way he is, he's pretty hard on the
whoever
guy
that skip
who's
would
skipping
be.
without without intending to be, but it's just the way that he was.
So him and Barry then probably had, it had run its course type of thing, right? A lot of years.
Yeah, well, and Barry was, he was a challenge to play with at times anyways. I mean, he was, drinking pretty good in those days, and Woody and Sparky, and a lot of their planning went on around what kind of shape their skip was in, right? Sort of thing. So, because that was sort of when that started to maybe possibly take a turn where that wasn't what you talked about at the end of a bonspiel all the time. For a lot of years it was. Who was the drunkest and how did they manage to win the bonspiel? And like Al Hackner was mind-boggling to me how that guy could drink all night and then go out and win. So that was starting to, I think was starting to just change a little bit. But so we had Doug Harrison. We thought we had the best team in the province, like bar none, because nobody knew who the hell I was, because I hadn't really curled at anybody had watched, and I was a lot better than they expected, I think. So
they hadn't really seen you, right?
Right. And so now you got Woody. So what a great guy for me to learn from, like on the front end, and me and Bill and Harrison's throwing the last rock, and we made the final of everything we went, and I don't think we won one thing, and and Doug really suffered from fear of failure. We left him an open draw to the 4-foot. We were life and death to make that.
So maybe not always a guy that should have been was comfortable as a skip all the time, although he had success.
Well, and he did both. He had a lot of success, but he's one of the guys. Like there's guys that play better if their team's not so good, right? Like I see that in Eve Muirhead. When her third struggles, she plays great. So if we left Doug some triple angle double run raid, he'd make it to win a game. We left him an open draw to the 4-foot, and he'd miss. That
more than he should. Yeah,
way more than he should. So we played with him the one year, and then the next year he kind of scuppered us. Actually, he called us at the last minute and said he was going a different route. Like we thought because we had such a good year, and we thought that we were doing another year together, and that was the year. So we didn't have a men's team.
It's always interesting how that happens, right? It's a different sport that way. There's no coach, there's no tryouts. It's just sort of a bunch of guys and girls, and each year they have their little, the little merry-go-round of teams, and they figure out what are we going to do.
And everybody wanted to play with Barry Fry, and Bill said Fry wouldn't say no to anybody. Somebody come up to him and say, "Hey Barry, we should play together." He'd say, "Sure, yeah, that's a great idea." He said, literally, when you showed up for your first club game, there'd be 12 guys there, all thinking they're playing with Barry Fry.
Yeah.
Because he'd never say no. But like you say, there's nothing it was all just guys negotiating their own piece of the deal.
So at this point, you got no last rock thrower. So Doug's gone.
We had no team, and we just decided to hell with it. Yeah. We just won't play there. Like we're not going to take a team that's not going to make us competitive, and because a little bit of some of me was the same as him. I used to look at a guy like Vic and marvel at how much he loved the game to play it as much as I didn't love the game.
So whether he was playing,
I loved winning.
Whether he was playing in a fun spiel or whatever,
just loved to play. Just loved to, and played a lot. It was an ice maker, right? So, I mean, he threw 64 rocks every single day. If we played only one game, he'd throw whatever it needed to make it.
Which back then guys didn't do. I think nowadays it's a little different, but back then that was not the norm.
Not many guys practiced as much as Vic. Not many had the opportunity where it's my work. I'm here, so I can do that, right? But he did. I used to say to people, they say, "Yeah, you must love curling." I said, "Yeah. I like curling. I love winning." And curling seems to be something I can win at.
You happen to grow up in Winnipeg. Like if you'd have grown up somewhere else and it hadn't been curling, it would be something else that you would find that competitive edge to do.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever.
They're as competitive to me.
Yeah. Like if you'd have grown up in Arizona, you'd have probably golfed a whole lot more, and that would have been where you would have put those efforts, maybe, right? Because curling wouldn't have been available to you. Yeah.
And as a kid, I golfed all the time. Like my dad was a member at Elmhurst, and back in those days, if your dad was a member, you could golf for nothing at Elmhurst till you were 16. So another guy who I played hockey with, he was our goalie, Mark Lydiard. His dad was a member there, and we hitchhiked out to Elmhurst every day. And we'd spend the whole day at the club playing and hitting balls and whatever.
So when did you and Vic actually get together then at that point and form a team?
Well, 83 we didn't play, so we played mixed, and we won the mixed.
Who was that? That was you and...
me and Bill.
You and Bill, yeah.
And Marlene Klutinks was our lead, and Chris Moore was our third. Chris Moore was pregnant at the time. So when we went to nationals, I think she was 6 months pregnant. And it was my first national. So I was, it was pretty cool to me that, I'm wearing a buffalo. I always said the buffalo had a little cow in it. but it was a Buffalo nonetheless. So I was pretty happy to be there. Chris Moore is, I went to school with her. Like we were in grade school together, and the Pizzarco twins, right? Chris and Kathy Pizzarco.
So this was all the same high school too?
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite the curling high school when you mention all the people that went to that high school.
Yeah, in Miles Mac. So there was a school league in Miles Mac, and I used to, and the thing I admired looking back at it about the Pizzarcos, and the reason that they were so good is they knew the men were better curlers, and they would try to play the men's game. So they're national junior champions or whatever they're, and I'm playing them, and they'd put down the broom and call a shot, and then they'd come back and say, what would you have played there?
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought, wow, like I've never won anything. But, they knew that the men played
so
a
they
better
actually,
game than
they
the
actually
women.
thought about how do we change the way we approach a game and play it different style. Because I think a lot of times out of the women's game, and it's definitely disappeared now, but I think it crept in even through the 80s and maybe even in some of the 90s where teams would try to play to not miss versus trying to force the other team to make a difficult shot. Right. And a lot of men's teams did that too. I mean, that was...
Well, junior teams too. Like, and that was part of the reason why I think that Chelsea never won a junior thing was because I was coaching her, and I never coached for that. And Jim Kirkness coached Barb, and he coached for that. And they won all the time. But I said to her, you know what, Chelsea? I said, in my mind, I'm going to teach you the game that I know is the right game. I said, you might not win all the time, and they might win because they'll get misses, but they're as good as they're ever going to be. If you learn this game, you'll get better and better forward. So that was my thinking on that. But there's no question that that's what a lot of the women did was, play for misses.
So at that point, you've had a taste of a national. So you're probably, at this, now you're in 84. So what was the team next year?
84 was the first year we hooked up with Vic. Bill was third, and I was second, and Don Rudd was lead. Basically, Vic came in and kind of took over our team.
So you could sense this guy was a skip. He had that
Bill wasn't
ability.
real sure, and I said,
"Oh, really? Yeah."
I said, "Vic."
Yeah. Because he'd have been younger. He'd have been younger than Bill for
Vic's a year younger than me.
Yeah.
So he was 4 years younger than Bill, and Bill kept saying, Bill was very much perfection. And that's why we worked on all the fine points of the delivery and stuff.
The release.
He threw a really good rock.
Yeah.
And we worked hard at throwing a good rock all the time. And Vic, too many curlers in my opinion, but lots of curlers go, that's just my out turn. Well, fix it, because it's not as good as it should be. So we would work at fixing it instead of moving the broom to accommodate.
I've had discussions on that. I mean, Pat Ryan had a good story about how with Rick Folk, he'd ask him, hey, how did I throw that? And he goes, oh, it's fine. He goes, well, no, I don't think I threw it fine. It's like, well, I'll just ice you right. It's like, no, I want to know how I'm throwing it. And yeah, you're right. A lot of guys would just ice. They would just change the ice.
I had exactly the same conversation the first year I played with Doogie. I came down to him. I said, was I tight on that? No, you were good. I said, was I tight on that? He says, no, I just, that spot in the ice. I want to know what I did. I don't want you to blow smoke up my arse. Tell me what I did, because I'll fix it.
Well, because if the other thing is, if you start icing a guy for a certain way he's going to do it, and then he does it differently later.
Right. The last thing I want to hear is, you threw that really good, but I was icing it because you were tight on the two before it.
So to your knowledge, for this team, that was in the way Bill, it sounds like Bill was a big proponent of this. That was a different way of thinking, right? Which is, why don't we just all throw it pure and not have to worry about, we should all have the broom in the same spot.
Right.
Yeah.
He was ahead of his time.
Clearly he gave Vic a chance, though, but he was a little nervous about him at the start.
He was a little nervous at the start, and the other thing I said to him was, and Vic's lucky. And Vic doesn't like this. He got mad every time I'd say that. But I said, but Vic's lucky. He'll call the wrong shot, but it works out all the time. I'm telling you, this is a guy that we want to partner with. And lots of times I'd be playing, I'd be holding the broom, I'm going, this is a shot. But I'd think to myself, Vic's lucky. And it would. Yeah. So 84.
So he was a natural skip then, too.
84, Vic lost the final to Mike Riley in Verdun. And we were in Verdun. That was Teddy Coalition played with us there. That was the first provincial lead ever. And so the next year we hooked up with Vic, and we went to Dauphin in 85. And Bubsy won in 85. And it was the only time, and I think every curler of our era has had it happen once, where you go bang, bang in the provincials and you're done. So we had a great year. We won everything. We go to the provincials. We lose once. We lose the second game.
Well, I know who you lost your first game to. The Colonel.
Was it?
Because I interviewed the Colonel. Do you know what actually happened there?
See, and I half the time.
And you remember that? You remember the story about the Colonel, right? The Colonel, he had his men's A group team from Assiniboine, a bunch of guys in their 40s, right?
Yeah.
They were done competitive curling,
right?
And they ended up, they were on both sides. They were the only unbeaten team, and then they lost on both sides.
Okay.
But they were the 32nd ranked team, and they were supposed to play Burtnick, who was ranked 1.
Right.
But because they were both Assiniboine teams, they adjusted it and had them play you guys.
Yeah, we were too.
And so, and there they were thinking, well, we just want to make a good showing and hope that we...
and they beat us.
And they...
And then they beat us, then I forget, I think it was a team from Thompson or something that beat us second game. What I remember was...
And at that point, were you guys all thinking, maybe this wasn't such a good squad, or was it second thoughts, or what?
I don't think, after the second loss, we weren't thinking anything. We were just thinking...
And you're all the way up in Dobbin.
Get the hell out of here. I think I was driving, and Bill and I had gone in my car, and I think it was, we made it home in something like, I don't know, 3.5 hours, something. We had Tina Turner's Private Dancer album had just come out then. So we had a song that we were going to play at like a team sort of rally song from the hotel to the rink every day. It hadn't gone through once, and we were on our way home.
So much for,
it didn't work very good at all. So then we played one more year, and that wasn't working. And then Bill decided that so I went back, Bill skipping. So 85, 86, we played with Vic. 87, Vic lost the final to Fowler. 88, Burtnick won in Morden. 89, and so I think in 1990 or 91, we played in Brandon. We lost to Murray Nye. We lost A semi to Murray Nye, and we thought we'd beat Murray Nye and we'd be in the A final. So we thought, geez, we got a shot here. And then the next year we lost the B semi to Stoughton somewhere.
Now at this point, this is with the team. This is still with Bill. You're playing with Bill.
Yeah, Vic's doing his own thing with Mark Olson. Hooked up with him after that. And then, after we lost to Stoughton, we were pretty discouraged. And Bill said, I don't know if I want to play anymore. I think I've had enough. And Vic
were you starting to feel that way? Like, did you start to think, geez, maybe this isn't going to happen? Or had you had...
I was starting to think that. Yeah. When I started, I thought, there's no way we're not going to a Brier. Yeah. It's just a matter of time. Mm-hmm. After about 10 years, which it was, I started to think, maybe it's not going to happen. And then Bill said, I think I've had enough. So I called Vic and I said, what are you guys doing next year? And long and the short of it was, we had played our club games. We had played out of Transcona one year when that was still a curling rink, the new one. And Bill didn't go to many club games because he hated playing club games. And Bill was the kind of player that, Finkbeiner, I think, said it best. He said, Bill Carey's the best relief curler in the game. If he didn't play all year and then you needed somebody to come in, he came in, I hooked up with Vic in 91, 92. Stoughton had won in 91, and Iverson and Stoughton didn't get along, and basically Stoughton fired him and hired Bill to play third. Basically got Bill to play third in the provincial.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And we played Bill. That was the first year I was playing with Vic, and I'd never curled against Bill before, and certainly never head-to-head, and he was playing
anything
third.
That mattered like that, for sure.
Yeah, so we played in the Fort Rouge Christmas Spiel. We played each other, and we beat him, which I felt pretty damn good about.
How did he feel about it? Was he okay?
He didn't feel too good about it. I don't think he was complaining a little bit about Stoughton, but he was starting to accept the fact a little bit that, that our team was a good team, with Vic, and we went to the first Spiel. It was at Pembina in 92, and triple knockout, bingo, bango, bongo, we're out, and we're starting. And Vic apparently went home and said to Debbie, said, I don't know, I might have made a mistake with this. And I think the next Spiel, I don't think we qualified in, and then I think we qualified in every Spiel we went in after.
And that's 90. That's 91, 92 season, which is when you
it was our first year that we hooked up and ended up winning the Brier.
Yeah, but what you're saying is, so here we are in maybe November and December, thinking maybe this isn't going to work.
Right. We're starting to think we might have made a mistake.
That happens, right? Yeah.
I know what Vic was hearing a lot of was people are saying Vic Peters, he's lost 2 finals or 3 finals or whatever. And I always correct people. I always say he never lost 3 finals. He lost 2 finals. Because in 88, he lost the A final and the B final to Carey Burtnick. So that's not losing the final in my mind. Because if you win that game, you got to win another one. Right? So anyways, I used to always correct people with that a little bit.
But was there a bit of the, geez, it's the next Gary Ross conversation maybe? Or what?
I think for sure there was that going on with Vic. But when Vic, basically people found out I was playing third for Vic, because Mike Friesen wanted to play with Vic and said, who are you going to get at third and blah, blah, blah. And Vic said, well, I think and I'd played basically half of my career at third and at second. I forget how many times. I'd been to provincial 7 or 8 times, and they were basically even as third and as second. But I was more known as second.
Because you'd had
whenever
success.
I was second, it was a higher profile team for whatever reason, right? But whenever Bill, we couldn't find somebody, like Jeff Ryan played with us one year, and we had Terry Owens played with us one year. And we had people that we felt I was a better player than, but they wouldn't play second and come on the team. So I would play second. And I got to, I mean, you know, I knew Bill's delivery so good that I keep, you know, when I was coaching people, I said, you know, the skip and one of your sweepers has to have a bond that, you know, that's the sweep, and the other sweeper can't get upset about it, because what I've seen is the skip basically has one guy that he looks to for the weight that he's going to throw, and one guy that he trusts once he lets it go, knows whether that needs sweeping, doesn't need sweeping, or whatever. And it was to the point that if Bill was coming out too hard, I'd go, whoa, 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 while he's sliding, and he pulled back on it, or if he was too slow, I'd tell him what he needed to do in his delivery. He would do it, and it would be right all the time. I said, now you got to be right, but if you know you're right, don't be afraid to tell the guy throwing you're coming out like, whoa, slow down a little bit. You let that go the way you're going, it's going through.
But that's those things where you got to have that relationship. Yeah, not everybody.
And I had that with Bill, so he really liked when I was playing second, because it was just a little confidence.
But also, like back in that era, did you find also, like coming up through the game in the 8th, that there was a bit of a stigma almost about position a little bit too, where you know, like I think in today's game, I don't think there's a lot less of that, because guys recognize that
a lot less of that.
To be at the top level, a guy that's playing second or lead has to have enough ability to skip.
Well, it was Manitoba's problem, right? For years, was everybody wanted to skip,
it,
right? So you wouldn't take 4 great players and put them on the same team, because you know, two wanted to play third, and 2 wanted to skip. Nobody wanted to be front end. There was definitely, and before free guard zone, you know, there's a reason for it. Like Donnie Rudd had the best line ever. We were doing after we won one of the years, we were doing a speech somewhere at a high school or something. He got up and started the speech off to introduce him. He says, hi, he says, my name's Don Rudd. He said, otherwise known as the Labatt's Light commercial. Because they'd never show his shots. It would always be the Labatt's commercial when we were on TV.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. But
what was the connection then with that team when you formed? And with
Don?
Yeah. Well, Don and then...
Well, when we actually hooked up
and then
with...
Chris at second. So,
yeah. We had actually hooked up with Don Rudd the first year that we played. Don played with us for... Bill, Don, and I played together, I think, for about 11 years. And we had various fourth guys come in second or third.
Where did Chris come into the equation?
Well, Chris and Vic had grown up together. They played together. And then, you know, Chris was back on the team once Mark Olson came into the scene. So after we were done our 2 years with Vic and he decided to go with Mark Olson, Danny came back on the team, and Danny just thinks the world of Vic, and always did. And said, always said, I knew this was a guy I could ride his coattails right to.
Yeah. And also a great shooter, and probably possibly a guy that could have played third as well, right? Like the two of you. Yeah, and
he says no.
He says no, really?
He says, he played third when I was playing against him at Rossmere and stuff, and he said I was a player. You know, he said I wasn't.
But I think that's the advantage I think you guys had, is you have, because you think about it, sometimes the second would be the weak, could be a weak link, right? I mean, the lead's the guy that can make all the easy shots all the time, but then if that all of a sudden you put your team in trouble.
If you have a good second, you can get an advantage on a team, because lots of times the skip and the third on most teams are pretty good players. The second is maybe where it gets weak. So if you've got a strong second, absolutely, I think you get. And I think that as the game's changed, I think the game has changed to the point where I always say it's a lead 2/3 skip. Second position has gone. It used to be just a hitter. You can't just be a hitter anymore.
You got to play all the shots.
You got to play all the shots, like the third does.
So 92. How was that provincials for you then? Was that to get over that first hump?
We lost our second game. It was in the Winnipeg
Traditional
arena.
double knockout.
Traditional double knockout. We lost our second game, so now we're our backs to the wall. And then we just got both things happened. I mean, we kind of got on a roll, and we got some breaks when we needed them. Vic's lucky. Like when I was playing with Bill and we needed a break, we never won a game by a guy missing a wide open hit, or he's got a hit and stick and he hits and rolls. We never won games like that, especially big games like that. And I firmly believe it's like we always talked about black hats and white hats. Like we had our challenges with the MCA and all their rules and everything else, and the way that they play favoritism, and they do, and they still do today, in my opinion. In the CCA and everywhere, they have their favorites. Lots of politics. So we were the black hat guys all the time. I think it was in the late 80s, we decided that we were going to get a coach. Who in the men's teams had coaches back then? But Bill said, why don't we talk to Jimmy Ursel and see whether maybe he wouldn't mind just coming out and having a look and maybe giving us some tips and stuff. So we did. Jimmy said, sure.
And there's a guy that,
all kinds of knowledge, right? So we got him out there at the Winnipeg Arena, and so we're going over there and we're talking to him and stuff like behind the boards, and the MCA called a meeting with us after. They said, you can't have a coach. I said, what do you mean we can't have a coach? Well, we didn't tell any of the other teams that they could have a coach, so you can't have a coach. I said, you didn't tell them that they couldn't? He said, no, but the other
This isn't like this is
in the 80s.
Yeah.
They basically said you could, because I'll guarantee you, if it was somebody else, a white hat, nothing would have been said.
Really?
Yeah. So I saw Bobby Ursel. I hadn't seen him in years. I saw him in, I forget where, Portage, I think. And he was coaching the Korean team. And I asked him how his dad was. And he said he was doing great. And they live in Kelowna now.
Well, and then you guys actually ended up playing him in the final.
We did. The year that we won. Yeah, we did. That's who we beat, was Jimmy Ursel.
Were you concerned maybe he had some advantages in knowing how you threw? Or you?
Well, you know what? I said to those guys, and Vic was really good about that. Like, Vic knew never to take. He never really took any team lightly. Like,
but at that point, I mean, that was his senior team.
Yeah. Him and Stan Lamont.
But good players,
and,
right?
Henry, no, it wasn't Henry. It was good players, anyways.
It wasn't Norm, right? Norm wasn't playing. Houck at that point.
Norm Houck was the third, I think.
Did Norm was playing with him? Yeah. I remember that Winnipeg arena. I'm pretty sure I was actually at the arena. I watched that game.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and I mean, it was a nail-biting game. That, we thought we jumped out to early lead, and we thought, we got.
But right off the bat, right? It's kind of one of those.
Right out in the first end.
But you think about it, it's a tough position to be in because they have nothing to lose.
Right.
No one is expecting anything from these guys.
Right.
Even though they would have been extremely competitive and wanting to win.
Right.
Because
you can't turn that off when you're playing, right? Like Jimmy Ursel said to us after, I'm glad you guys won. Yeah. Like, we would have done nothing. Right. Like, because he'd won and gone to the Brier before. And that's what I found with Bill a lot, too. And he regrets that now. But he would always say, it's probably good that we lost because that team's not good enough to win the Brier. He was always thinking ahead. Can we win the next level with this team? And if he thought we couldn't or we weren't good enough, then, some of them said it's okay if we lose here.
You guys played really well that Brier. You didn't play like rookies at all. I mean, I assume, too, you came with a lot of experience. Coming in, you knew what it takes to win a Buffalo, so you recognize that just by wearing that at the Brier, there's no reason to feel like you don't belong, right? Not a chance.
Well, we knew we could play, because we'd had the public didn't know us at all.
Yeah. Now, had you played
the teams did,
but had you been able to play Howard before in other Bonspiels? Because there was a bit of travel, and certainly not like it is today.
Right.
You still had a chance to at least test your abilities.
We had gone into some Bonspiels and played those guys, and it was us who got Vic doing that. Vic would always play in the local stuff, but it was us.
Really?
Who said,
he didn't want to travel.
We got to go to Thunder Bay. And he had kids, and
the commitment at the club, and it's probably
Well, and that was a real challenge for him. Since his death, Debbie and I have sat down a couple times and just talked about that's a pretty hard thing that she's going through, and they're my neighbor now. Actually, Vic lives right beside me, and has for I think we moved there I think in '91. I think he moved there in about '95. Like it was after we started. You played these other teams. You kind of knew you belonged in. So you got the buy-in of the final because that was ahead of the page system and all that. Well, that was a wild game. We went to watch the semifinal too after that, and it was Howard playing Martin. And they were shooting the lights out. And it was about the fourth or fifth end, I just got up. I said, I don't want to watch any of this. This isn't doing me any good. These guys are making everything that they're looking at.
Well, again, like you said, rather be the player than the guy watching it.
So I left.
Did you?
Yeah.
No more scouting? Yeah.
That was enough of that for me. Because that wasn't helping me. That was intimidating me is what it was doing. So, we knew we had a one-game shot. And we kind of went, I think when you went there from Manitoba for sure, you thought this is probably our only chances we're never going to.
There was a sense of that too. Yeah, because think about it. I mean, even you look at someone like Burtnick had struggled, and
so many great teams
you'd struggled for years, right?
Yeah. Right. So we thought, make it count. Yeah, we're probably got our only shot here. So let's make sure. So
it was a pretty low-scoring final. Then was that a strategy going in that you guys wanted to? And again, this is
the
year before Free Guard Zone, 2 years before Free Guard Zone.
It very much surprised me that the Howard team was so defensive.
Oh, really? So they were actually more.
They were the ones.
Now you had Hammer, right?
We had Hammer.
Yeah,
and we had 2 picks in the first 5 ends. So after 5 ends we were tied 2-2, and they had Hammer. They'd turn Hammer around, and we were quite happy to be tied because we had 2 of my rock. pick, which you didn't get a lot of picks back then.
Yeah, and when you think
like
about, well, also when you think about where every end is a blank and a deuce can change the whole dynamic of a game.
Oh, yeah.
That's huge, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
You know, we did a good job of staying within ourselves through that thing and shutting out the noise, like blocking out all the crowd. And I think what I see in a lot of young players, and we weren't young, and maybe that was the difference, right? Like I was 37, I think, when the first Brier that I played, and the TV, like that really just didn't bother me. I was probably lucky, and I told myself two things. I told myself I played great on TV. I didn't know I did or not, but I just kept telling myself that.
Yeah.
And there's nobody in that building but it's just our game.
Just these 8 guys, and that's it.
Anywhere, yeah. And I wouldn't look around if I heard a noise. I wouldn't. For me, it had to stay right on that the whole.
Yeah, and you guys all seem to really stay within yourselves. And even though, like you say, it got a little bit tenuous, and then had to go to an extra end.
Yeah,
which
that hit that rollout, and I lifted my arms up because in my mind there was no way that, because it was frosted, there was no way that was rolling up. So I never do that. I never do it before the shot is finished. But I lifted my arms up in the air like we'd won, and then I remember there's a picture, and I'm amazed I didn't crush that broom. So I squeezed that broom handle so hard as that rock rolled a little bit, and then it rolled out. So I right away thought, I gotta talk to him. Vic never came down. Vic stayed at the far end. He turned around, and he never came down and talked to us. So I grabbed the other two guys, and I said, look, if they'd have told us we'd have the hammer in the extra end, we'd have said, thank you very much. That's what we got. Let's finish. We did. But he wouldn't come. He never came down. We never talked to him.
So around that time, I'm going to get into the next Brier because there's a great story, of course, to talk about there. I chatted with Warren a few weeks ago, but we actually talked after the recording about 93. So I want you to tell it in your words. But I was interested to know, like, the Ryan Express had just come through. They'd rolled through a couple of Briers. You know, you guys play a final. It's a 4-3 final. And it's interesting how you say it almost seemed a little bit like Russ wanted to take that. But, teams could take a strategy of let's just blank every end. I mean, I actually read there was one game that happened in the Manitoba Provincials where it was hit on the nose in the last end, 1-0.
Right. Kevin Martin won the 92 Brier 2-1 or 91.
Or the 91. So did you already kind of have a sense, like, and there's something wrong here? Like, something has to change? Like, what was or were you guys just saying, well, we're just going to play the game as it is? Or were you already part of that conversation?
We played a lot more offense than like, we were known for being good hitters, but we played defense with offense. And I think we surprised some people because Vic liked to go for it. And we played a more offensive game than a lot of teams did back then. But if we got a lead on you, you were done. Now, we'd never played Russ Howard. I think we'd played him once before that. But I mean, that year was the year that I think they lost 4 games in the whole year. Like, they went over $100,000, which was just mind-boggling to everybody else then. But, we kept saying to ourselves, they put their pants on one leg at a time. And, I mean, forget about those guys. Let's just make our shots. If we make our shots, let's see what happens, kind of thing. And we got up on them in the round robin. And we were 3 up, and they got a deuce in 5. So they got a little bit of momentum going into 5. And then we played 6, and we said, okay, let's get our deuce right back in 6. And we went out there, and we were playing the shot, and the Howard boys we had them in trouble. We were looking like we were set up for our deuce, and they tried a harder shot. And Russ turned to Glenn and said, well, if they got a deuce here, we're dead. And I thought, that's respect. Because they knew if we got a deuce in, we were going to run and hide. And that's what we did. We got a deuce in that end. We ran the thing out, and that was the end of that. So I think in the final, maybe that had something to do with it. But I watched those guys over the years, and they always, to me, played more defensive in a final than they did getting there, which I think is a mistake. Because those guys were so good. Yeah,
well, and we'll get to another final that you were involved in. It was a complete opposite. Of course, that was, the 3 rock free guard zone.
Right.
So did you kind of sense there was a shift in the game coming, something was going to change, or it just still seemed like I love the game the way it is, and it doesn't seem like it had to.
We liked a little more rocks in play. Like we liked, I wasn't sure that the free guard zone when Russ came up with that, the Moncton rule or whatever they called it. I wasn't sure that was the way to go. Did you guys play in that one? You guys? No, we didn't play in that one.
You didn't travel to it? No, it was just...
No, I don't know whether we were invited and didn't go. What year was
You would have been invited, because it was, I thought that was 9. That was, or was that, it was early 90s. Had you guys, maybe it was just before you?
Maybe. It might have been just before.
I better look that up.
Yeah, I don't remember. I remember the Moncton rule and that Bonspiel, but we weren't there. But, again, a little bit of, some of the competitive stuff. We just thought that, who do these guys think they are, that they don't like the game. game. Because a lot of the stuff that the Eastern teams didn't like about the Ontario teams, Wernick and Kawaja and Howard and stuff, they all love Shorty Jenkins ice. Yeah. Well, I didn't like Shorty Jenkins, and I'll tell you why. Because what that does, and it all ties into the brooms last year and everything else. All of the changes that have happened in the game over the years have done one thing, primarily, to me, if you melt it down. They've increased your margin of error. So when we played in that 92 Brier, Marcel DeWitt, and to bury a rock around the center line guard, you were probably edge of the four. So you got to throw it good if you're going to, like you got to squeak by that thing, you got to sweep it perfect, and you might not still have the whole rock buried. That to me is a much better throw and more precision than Eddie Wernick, God love him, coming out 3 feet inside and just winging it back out there somewhere on Shorty's ice. If you throw the right weight, it'll end up in the spot you want it to end up in. It's just increasing the margin of error. I wasn't convinced that was a good thing, because I thought we could be better than a lot of teams because we threw it better. And Bill's thought always was the team who throws it the best should win.
With a little bit of that magic luck.
Well, that's what you needed Vic for.
You just need a bit of that.
And don't think I didn't say to Bill, so let me get this straight. I curled with you for 13 years, and all I had to do to win the Brier was not curl with you? Yeah, that gets some looks out of him, I'll tell you.
So you repeat in 93 in Manitoba, which, like you even just said, I mean, you didn't know if you'd ever make it back. You had to actually work your way through the MCA Bonspiel to get there. It was a grind. I'm sure everybody was gunning for you.
Yeah.
So you get there in 93. You have a great round robin.
Yeah.
Well, in that, I guess it was great in that you beat all the tough teams. You obviously had some losses maybe you
we shouldn't have had. And that's what we did. That was we lost the 2 games that we lost in Regina in the round robin were to PEI and Quebec. We went into we lost. Again, that's another story in the 93 Brier that you could talk about forever. It was bringing Shorty in the middle of the night, and we go out to play. The game, and the ice. We play in Quebec again. And the ice.
And did they tell anyone? Was anybody aware of it? Not
Ontario,
that you know of.
Ontario. Well, they were the ones who got it there. White hats.
So, and that was in which draw? Would that have been then when the ice?
It was right about in the middle. Yeah.
And
the Howard boys didn't like the ice. It wasn't moving enough. So we got to do something to get more movement in the ice.
And I'm still how was Shorty allowed to do that in the middle of an event with?
I have no idea.
My understanding is that also there was a backlash against that, but I'm just wondering at the moment how it occurred, right? Because who's controlling the environment is kind of interesting.
We don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll ever get the real story. From our perspective, it was the Howard boys complaining that there wasn't enough movement in the ice. We got to do something. Let's bring Shorty in. But again, nobody was told anything. So he was run into town to do this thing, and then he was run out of town when the shit hit the fan. Yeah. Kind of thing. And I mean, how can one province affect that kind of change? White hats, right?
So then you guys, you're in a 4-way tie.
Yeah.
At what point were you aware what the playoff format was going to be? Because you had beaten Rick Folk, Rick Lang, and Russ Howard. So, rightly, I think felt, hey, we should be in a position where there's a bye to the final. Because again, the playoff structure was a semifinal, so top 3 teams, semifinal and final. At what point were you notified and told that this may not be the structure or the format? After the final game of the final round robin.
Vic was told before.
Oh, okay.
TSN apparently told him before the game started. But none of us knew that. We had checked with the umpire several times. Said, if we win this game, and we went through it detail. And Johnny Loxton is, if you don't know Johnny Loxton, I always say he's like a gnat. He's like one of those things that's sort of buzzing and you can't ever get out of your face. And he called everybody. And ultimately the head umpire, Bob something or other. And he said to us, if you win your last round robin game, you're playing on Sunday.
Yeah.
So we went to the rink with I went with one shirt. It was first place or no place. And we won that game at the last minute. I mean, we stole in the last end to win that game. And I was jubilant because I thought, geez, we're in the final again. And then got told not so
on the ice, right?
On the ice.
Right after the game. So when I spoke with Warren about it, and unfortunately, like I said, I didn't record that section of it, but he actually identified to his end of it, he said on Wednesday that there could be an issue because there's a conflict in the way it's written. How are we going to deal with this? And he mentioned that he mentioned it to Stuart Olson, who I guess was, part of the Manitoba contingent. But
and
then
he was the head guy in the CCA.
But he didn't relay that conversation, because I think maybe if you know this on Wednesday, completely change it. I mean, you'd still be frustrated and probably feel like it's unfair, but at the very least, you've got a few days to process it, deal with it, think about how you're going to deal with it if it happens.
At the end of the day, the rule was very clear. The rule that was written, I guess they never anticipated it would be for 4 teams. They were thinking it would be 3 teams tied for first place. And you go by your record against. So it was clear to us that, it was clear as a bell. We're 3-0. They were all 1-2.
Yeah, you'd already played each other.
So we're in the final, and you guys beat the hell out of each other to see who plays us. That's what we thought.
So then you had to go back on the ice at what point?
I think it was 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. There was meetings, and I wasn't allowed to go to the meeting. Chris wouldn't let me go to the meeting.
Did a little bit of Bill come out in you at that point then?
Yeah. A lot of Bill came out in me. I wanted Warren Hansen bad. I wanted him to come down and I wanted him to come and explain to me why.
Did he come
down?
What
was going on? No,
he wouldn't do that. Yeah,
and that really upset me. That from my perspective, he didn't have the ball to come down and tell me to my face why this is even going on. Like, what is this crap?
At least face up to it, or
so
whatever.
Our other option to me was not play.
Did you then also start to feel like the black hat again at that point? Like, did it feel like it a little bit?
Yeah.
Or?
Oh yeah. Because to me, all of this controversy over this rule got started by, guess who? Ontario. And it became very clear to me through that whole Brier that the Ontario Curling Association really was the Canadian Curling Association, because whatever they wanted was what got. And I was extremely disappointed in our Manitoba's organization. Stan Olsen was the president.
Or Stan Olsen, sorry, not Stewart. Stan Olsen.
Yeah. He was the president at that time. The insurance guy was our Manitoba guy. We saw them about 3/4 of the way through the Brier. They said, "Hey, boys, we understand you're doing good." They hadn't been to one game. Nobody jumped into our defense. Yeah. Like, we had to argue all this stuff ourselves. And Danny's very methodical and very thorough about everything he does, and he's a businessman and everything else. So he was able to take his emotion out of it, which I couldn't do. And looking back on it, I wanted to be part of that meeting, because there was no way they were going to go. And I don't know what would have happened if I were in the meeting, but it wouldn't have been good. It wouldn't have been good.
You might have had another cast on your hand at some point.
Or somebody might have had one.
Or somebody. Yeah. Huge disappointment, clearly, then, and you guys then kind of stumbled through. Like, did you feel like your headspace was, I can't imagine for that extra playoff.
You don't think at the time that it is. Because, again, the game's on, so your attention goes into that. But there's no way we could have been 100 ready for that game. Because not only, so their solution is a somewhat confused page playoff type system. And we're clearly in first place, and they said, you guys get first place. But these guys are all going to throw a draw to the button to see who plays who. Well, Rick Folks, the guy who's throwing last, he's got complete control of who he plays.
Yeah, he can decide.
and we're sitting there watching, and we're not even involved in that.
Yeah. There's been a lot of...
It was bad. Bad.
It's there's been some improvements made, and I think everyone would agree to that in terms of
absolutely.
Imagine, do you remember the year that Connie Allardyce, and there was a 3-way tie, and they actually pulled a number out of the bottom of a puppet. Do you remember that? There was the Scotty's plush toy. I can't around the same. It was around 93, I think, or 94 maybe. But it was.
She went in 92. She won in 92
So there was the plush toy, and they had to pull the number out of the bottom of it. It's just bizarre things like this, right?
And Kathy Borst,
and they showed that on TV.
She won 5 games or something in one day.
Yeah. So at that point now, and you're getting up in years, you're still, but the team's still, happy to be. You guys, it seemed like you guys really enjoyed playing together. You were definitely one of those teams where it wasn't just about winning. It was, we get along, really enjoy each other's company. We liked
winning, and we liked each other. But, like any team, there was really 2 pairs. At some point, I've had enough of Vic, and he's had enough of me. And, so Vic and Denny would go somewhere, and Donnie and I would go somewhere, or Scotty and I in 97, right? And I think you need to do that. You can't, I'm amazed that the women's teams do absolutely, they're never not together. Mm-hmm. That's just too much.
Yeah.
That's
well,
too much.
I've always kind of felt teams start to break apart when it's because a lot of times it's like this. It's about the stories.
Right.
Well, after a while, when you've heard all the stories over and over again, it's like I got to go hear some new stories. Or my stories are getting old.
I've heard this before.
I've heard this before. Did you? So 97 though, I that final to me was fascinating because it's kind of the early days of the 3 Rock free guard zone. You guys had, and even then, even that free guard zone model could still be pretty defensive, and you could.
Yeah.
So you guys had a wild final. Like, I don't know, was that very different than the rest of the Brier had seemed at that point? Like, if I recall, I think it just seemed like a very odd, the way the game developed. It just, there was...
Well, Vic was getting to the point already, and I don't know when it changed, like so definitively, or he just was all out aggressive. He just what I call stupid aggressive. We were playing aggressive in games where we shouldn't have been playing aggressive. And it started to become a problem between him and I, because it's great. And Vic would say, all you got to do is we make our shots. He hated giving up, hated giving somebody a deuce. He just hated it. So he wouldn't do it. He'd say, if they're going to get a deuce, they're going to have to outshoot.
So even if he might increase the risk of a 3.
Right.
Because he wants to try to
3 up.
Make it, yeah.
So it's okay to give him a deuce, and we're 1 up, and we get the deuce back. He didn't like that. Every time he'd say, well, why don't we play this? Well, you're just giving him a deuce. Well, that's okay there. No, it's not. Like, he just didn't like that. So it took over at times when I don't think it should have. It wasn't necessarily wise.
So was it at play in that final against Martin? Then?
It was.
It felt like it, because it seemed like a very back and forth wild affair.
3. Yeah. We got that 3 early, and we nosed a blank in 5. So, like, they got a deuce back. We nosed the blank, so we're 2 up at the 5th end break. But nosing that blank, instead of being 1 up with, was a definite downer from our perspective. Like, we lost some momentum there, I felt. And then we came out.
Plus, you don't expect that to happen, right? I mean, you guys, Vic's a great hitter, and
And all of a sudden, he doesn't get his usual little in-out.
It's amazing, though, eh? I mean, like, in the trials in Winnipeg, and there's Martin at his last hurrah, and he's playing Morris in the semifinals in the Cotter team, and he bonked it, right? And you look at it and go, how does Kevin Martin, who's, and Vic's similar, right? Great hitter, right? Always known to just, like, right on, like you say, you guys were very much on path, consistently delivery and release. Amazing, right? That happens sometimes.
Pressure. What it is, I mean, I really think that's what it is. Like, sometimes, as much as they're good at ignoring pressure, sometimes it just
creeps in. Yeah,
it happens,
even when they don't notice it. Yeah.
So we went into the 5th end break saying, great half, guys. But there was a nagging feeling that now they had some momentum. Like So it's kind of one of those. We were going to have to get control of the game back.
Kind of one of those attaboys, but you could sense something.
Yeah.
If you've watched the documentary about the Buffalo Bills, and in their who lost all those Super Bowls. That last Super Bowl, they were actually ahead at halftime. But somehow, for whatever reason, at the halftime, they didn't feel like they were going to win. Did it feel like that? Like, it probably wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad. We'd lost a little bit of momentum. We were really riding a momentum. Like, we felt like we had them this way. And
they were chasing you.
And they were discouraged.
But it was a shift,
because we got that 3 on them, we got the jump on them, we had control of the game, and they weren't going to be able to get it back from us. And I didn't think that. And then we bonked that. Now they've got the hammer. And then we come out in 6 and give them a 4 right out of the gate in 6. So now I'm thinking, well, what the hell? And then we get 2 back in 7. And then we still 2 and 8.
I remember.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay.
Yeah. So really, this is like C group down at the Heather. Like, this just seems like, what's going on here? This is the Brier final, and it just and it seemed like a strange game that way. You're all great players. Yeah. But it just seemed like the way it was going. So, and it was fascinating, because I still remember the final end. I remember, so you guys were, at that point,
1 down.
You're 1 down. And Martin could have tried to, I think he had an opportunity, even though it was free guard zone, he had an opportunity to try to clean things up. And he actually decided to go for the steal. Yeah. And I think to me, it almost seemed like an un-Martin thing to do. But I think given the dynamic of the game and what was happening, do you sense that's what it was? Like, didn't it almost seem like, wow, now we have an opportunity?
But think about Martin now, again, from there on. It was, he'd give his left nut to have the hammer in the final end. And look at the skins. He'd give the guy the skin, so he'd get the hammer in the last one. So I think he thought, if we try to run from this deuce, they'll get their due. I mean, look at the game. The game was 2s and 3s and 4s all
everywhere.
Over so trying to be defensive here isn't going to work. Yeah. And he went on the offense, which I thought was a good play of his. And I think we made a mistake in that Vic, we're moving guards, but we weren't peeling guards. And I thought we had too many rocks to play again. And Vic seemed to be okay, because then he, just opened it up and rolled over here. And then we're trying to come in off this corner guard one. We had no time left. When Vic threw his last shot, and that was definitely makeable, that last shot. But, Vic said, yeah, right out of his. And now you can just hear the crowd. It's getting louder and louder as Vic goes down the ice because the clock's running. And you probably couldn't have written a TV script that had much more drama than that at that time. First time in the Saddledome, place is sold out.
That's right. That was
freaky.
That massive.
And the semifinal it was too. I remember saying, they said, it's sold out, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, there'll be a bunch of corporate tickets. There's no way all those seats are going to be full. And we came out for the semifinal against Wernick, and I remember shit. I couldn't find an empty seat anywhere. And you're just thinking, wow. So you're just, you're 6 off the ground.
Even though you said, like you said earlier, from your other Brier experience, you were able to shut out the crowd.
I was. And I'm able to do that, but not when you're coming out.
Yeah.
When you're first coming out and you get a hole, then that's when it said to me, okay, you really got to work at staying on this.
So this felt like a different event.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder, maybe that even impacted
Regina
that
was
game.
awesome.
But I even wonder if that impacted that finals where it was such a crazy game, right? Just
it could have.
The environment, and again, like you say, you don't think of it at the time, but somehow it just bleeds in somehow. Yeah.
Well, we got that 3, and I think that then those guys had to go for it. Vic didn't like just giving free points away, so we played. We were pretty good at playing defense with offense. We would make the shots that we needed to make, and a lot of that was Vic's confidence in us making the shots at the time. And then you don't make a shot, and you're questioning why the hell are we doing this? And usually it would be me that would miss a shot. So now we're in trouble because I didn't make that shot, and I'm pissed off because we shouldn't even be playing this. Who needs that extra pressure? We got enough of it. Play smarter.
So had you guys started to wear thin a little bit in each other, after that Brier, and how did things? You guys still played together?
Yeah, we played one more year, but we were pretty much done.
Yeah, and then at that point, were you starting to feel like Bill had at some point then, and you said, okay,
I was starting to wonder whether I wanted to play anymore.
There's a grind, yeah.
Well, it started to get. I was 41, 42, and I was getting tired of playing. I loved playing in the big stuff, but I was getting tired of the pro. I listened to Cindy Clausen and who's the other skater? The redhead. Claire Hughes. Chelsea's, graduation for commerce, they were the guest speakers. And I remember Claire Hughes, who was a terrific public speaker. Cindy Clausen, not so much. It's just not her personality, right? She's so quiet. But Claire Hughes was great. And she talked about, and what she said, which to me was bang on, you have to love the process. And I wasn't in love with the process. I liked the end result, if I could get there. But the process, and to try to give yourself the best chance, was getting to be too much. I was getting tired.
Yeah.
And when we'd be playing and we'd win a game or we'd make a good shot, and I'd think, we got to play. I used to think, we're losing. What the hell are we doing out here? But we'd win, and that meant that we had to play another game, and I would have been okay with going home.
Yeah, there's just that little part of you.
And I thought to myself,
Yeah, and Vic never got that?
No.
Did Vic ever? Yeah,
no.
He just loved
loved competing.
Yeah, and loved to play it.
Loved
the game. Loved to throw a rock. Yeah.
But I hit the wall kind of thing. And then, I would have played. I would have still played with our team, but he decided that, then that's what Vic, he had a lot of thirds over the year. We went to his golf tournament this year that they had at Allardyce, the first, that's what's going to be an annual event.
The Memorial Golf Tournament.
And I was with Scotty Grant, Kenny Tresser, and Don Rudd. So all of us had played with Vic. And the foursome behind us was Denny, a couple guys that I didn't know all that well that were from Steinbach. Yeah. Oh, I know who it was. It was Kathy King's brother, Giesbrecht, who owns the Giesbrecht GM or whatever, Denny and somebody else. And they'd all played with Vic at different times too. So Denny was back there, he looked around, he says, wow. He says, I've curled with every guy in this tee box. He said, I'm just a curling whore. But, all the guys said, if Vic started to get stale, he would change it. Wasn't whether the guy was playing good or not, it was, if he wasn't playing as good as he expected, he would inject blood into the
Mix it up, yeah.
So, I'd played good. There was no reason in my mind for him to change our thing, but, I was complaining about his being too offensive and stuff. I think, I believe he did it to rejuvenate himself. And, okay, so then I was going to go play with Doogie because we played the 1 year and we lost the final to Stoughton, and then I went back with Vic because of the Olympics thing, and then that was '96 that I was with Doogie, and Stoughton went on to win the Worlds, had to beat us twice to win Manitoba. So we kind of thought that deserved another run, so I was going to go with Armo and Doogie, and they just played in the '98 Brier in Winnipeg, and Kirkness was going to play second, and I didn't know James all that well, and I said, Jesus, how's he going to take that? Like, he just made it to a Brier playing third. I don't think he's going to be too happy about being told whether now he's going to play second. Doogie
Here's
said,
this old guy coming
Doogie
in.
says, I don't give a shit whether he likes it or not.
By the way, another guy that played with a lot of guys, Doogie.
Oh yeah, and everybody's got something. Doogie treated me great. Doogie, right from the get-go, I think would tell anybody who would listen that I was the best third he ever had, and he treated me great. I remember saying to him before we agreed to play together, I said, I need to have a meeting with you, and I said, Doogie, I've watched you over the years, and I said, you're one of a handful of players that amazes me. I mean, in '96 that you haven't won yet, because I think you're good enough to win. But I said, I've seen the way you treat some of your players, and I'm going to tell you right up front, I do not respond to that. That doesn't get me going. It doesn't make me play better. It's not the way that you're going to get the best out of me. And so he asked me how that was, and I told him, and he was good as gold to me that whole year. We had a great year. That year. We should have won. We thought we were the best team in the province and that we should have won that year. So we thought we'd play together again, and then Doogie bailed with Bodnerchuk at the last minute. And we got Ronnie Carmelock to join, Jimmy Spencer, and James Kirkness and I just weren't on the same page at all. And then that's when I decided that I've
had a good run.
And I was actually Bill and I were going to play with Steve Gould and Norm. It was going to be the two brother things before that. I remember saying to somebody, I've been on and off 3 teams, and it's still the off season. So that didn't work out, and then I just decided, maybe this new game, the way this game's going is, I've had my 5 minutes. I think
I think you had a little more than 5. So is there anything else I didn't ask you that you?
No, I think you covered a good. You got a lot of stories out of me. I remember, thinking stories. I don't even know what the hell story I can tell. So you did a good job.
One thing I forgot to ask, because I'd like to ask about gamesmanship, because one thing in curling that's pretty famous is the little things that guys will do. I don't know if you guys ever did that. I didn't see that in your team, but you probably ran into it, or even when you were. Yeah. Like what are some those things? Where, teams would kind of push the envelope a little.
Stevie Gould and Gary Vandenberg were the worst as far as I was concerned. And Terry Kirk out of in '96, he was playing with Harrison, and they were and Bob Scales, and they were we played them in the A-side final, and they were sort of a bit of a surprise to me there, and Harrison's playing third, and Terry Kirk was playing second, and Bill had played with Terry in something or other, so I knew him a little bit. I didn't know him all that well, and he was in, and I wouldn't start gamesmanship, and it really annoyed me when people would. And that was the worst thing they could do, as far as, and I talked to Steve Gould when I was going to coach Reed's team, because he'd gone to the Brier. He was talking. He said, I was just a dumb hockey player. He said, Gary was, he said, I was playing hockey when I was out on the curling ice. I said, yeah, I remember the bullshit you guys pull. And he laughed. He said, well, he said, we would do that to everybody else. It worked great. He said, we'd do that to you. And he said, you'd shoot the lights out. I said, it pissed me off when you guys would stand over top of me, after I'd let the rock go, and I'd get up and almost bump into you because you're trying to, I knew you were trying to intimidate me, and I said, that was the worst thing you could have done. Because then I was all focused, all about, I said, and I wasn't going to miss any. So that was sort of, and again, it's a mental
So what happened
deal,
in that?
It's a Terry Kirkness. So I'm standing, I threw a shot or something, and he's, we stole two. We were like 4 or 5 up or something. And I was really adamant about, once you get up on a team like that, don't relax. It was a little bit of Bill in the first end, right? Yeah. But I saw that so many times that you just think, we got these guys now, and
they chip away, and then next thing you know. I hated
that. And I used to always say, step on their throat. Like, let's finish this thing off. So I was all about talking to the team and saying, don't let up. Yeah. Let's stay focused, this, that, and the other thing. And Terry Kirkness, I threw a shot, and he's standing behind me, and he's yapping at me about, we got no chance now. We'll never beat these guys now. And I turned around, and I looked at him, and I said, fuck off, Terry. Turn around. We go on. He says, I'm just being nice.
Because you think he was playing some mind games, and he's trying to get in your head. Yeah.
There he was. And I called him on it, and he said, I'm just trying to talk to him. Bullshit. So I didn't usually initiate it, but I didn't like it.
You fed off it, though.
I fed off it, because I didn't like it. And to me, it just wasn't a classy thing to do. And what I don't think, and I think we got credit for it as our team. Like, people liked our team because we were kind of a bunch of lunch bucket guys that we weren't the highfalutin fancy shooters, but we'd hang in there, and we played our best against the best. I used to say to people that Russ Howard's team was maybe the best curling team ever. One of the things that I'm real proud about in winning the Brier was we beat, in my mind, one of the best teams ever to play. You could say Kevin Martin's team and everything else, but think about that team. Glenn Howard's playing third. Wayne Maddaw's playing second. And Wayne Maddaw then. So here's the thing: if you were, let's say that you went into like a men's seniors or the super seniors. I don't know. Let's say you played them in a. Right.
Let's say we reenacted that Brier final, and everybody brought their Purple Hearts and put them on their jackets.
Yeah.
they'd have Kate.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can't. Yeah. I said, well, we just beat the best team in the world, and they said, well, why would you say they're the best team? I mean, you beat them. I said, that's the best team in the world. I mean, that's curling. We played a great game, and I'm proud of the fact that we beat them. Doesn't mean that we're a better team than they are, because that team plays the same way every game. We'll go out and lose to schmoes because we just don't play to that level all the time. I said that those guys play to that level all the time. They're the best team I've ever seen.
Something else.
Yeah.
Well, it's great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
Good conversation.
I appreciate it.